All right, folks, good morning. This is an express edition of Snowman in the Morning. We got a few minutes. We're coming up against a technical glitch, but we're going to bring you something, and I got my good friend Mark Kelly on the hotline with me. Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. You hanging in there? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there.
That's good.
I saw your post yesterday about Ohio State, or that you weren't happy with the college football, and I had to go over what exactly you were unhappy with.
I'm not arguing for Ohio State. They got beat by Iowa in Iowa, and they gave up 55 points. Ohio State's not the team I'm arguing for, and I know this is going to probably be a stupid argument, but I'm thinking about the fairness of a team that has beaten everybody on their schedule, and that is Central Florida.
Okay, all right, that's what you're arguing for. But you got to also understand where they are,
right?
As far as maybe in a college team, they're not in the same breadth as Alabama.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're talking, if you're talking about the best, see that's what kind of annoyed me with everybody.
Yeah.
Who they think should be in the top four? Because by the eye test, obviously Alabama's the best team.
Yeah.
Because they have been all year. When you beat Ole Miss and Vanderbilt by a combined score of 115-3.
Yes.
And back-to-back weeks.
I know.
All year they were the best team.
I know. I'm just thinking about the fairness, and UCF is beating everybody on their schedule. Western Michigan went through this some time back, and you're right. Those two teams will never be in the same breath as Alabama because Alabama's been one of the best teams all year. Do you think the committee got it right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at it, even though Ohio State beat three teams in the top 15, that they, supposedly that was the big advantage they had.
Right.
Alabama, as far as the strength of victory, it was harder to go 11-1 against Alabama's schedule than it was to go 11-2 against Ohio State's schedule. And it's no. If you watch Alabama play this year, by the second quarter, their reserves are in, and their starters are taking the game off because they've already beaten somebody so bad. So there's no doubt watching Alabama this year, they've been the best team in college football. They ran into a rival in one of, a rival game where they didn't play the best that they could because they were dealing with a lot of injuries. But, that can happen on a one-game basis. If they would have lost that game in October, we wouldn't have been having this discussion.
True. Very, very true. So it's Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and Oklahoma that are the top four. That was the final poll that was revealed yesterday. A lot of people are making the argument for Ohio State. I am not. And, again, the reason I'm not making the argument for Ohio State is because they got rolled in Iowa. And, plus, they lost to a team that's in the top four in their house, and that's Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that really was a beating. I mean, that was one of the first games of the year.
Yep.
You had Alabama beating Florida State and dominating them, and then Oklahoma going in and beating Ohio State, which not too many teams. You figure a team from the Big 12 isn't going to go in and beat a team from the Big 10 that is as big as Ohio State. Now,
exactly.
I'm not the biggest fan of the Big 10, but Ohio State and Michigan are probably the two teams you figured would not get beat at home to a Big 12 team.
Right.
I don't care who it is.
Right.
So when that happened, that kind of automatically got them off on a bad foot, and then losing to Iowa like they did just made everything worse.
Which loss by Ohio State you think knocked them out? I say it was the Oklahoma game because it was at the Horseshoe, and Baker Mayfield and company came in and did a number on them.
Yeah, but I think you saw throughout the year that Oklahoma was good. So as the year went on, that became less and less of a bad loss.
This is true.
But when you lose by 30 to a team that's 7-5. In the Big Ten, which has Rutgers and Maryland and Illinois and all the other Northwestern, all the other jokes of a team, you can't especially think that when you're talking about the SEC, even in a down year for the SEC,
right?
It's still much better than any other conference.
It is. It is, and the SEC has two teams in. That's Alabama and Georgia. And Georgia got in by the strength of winning the SEC championship against a team that blasted them at Jordan-Hare Stadium earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact that you look at Georgia was great all year. I mean, they only lost one game all year, and they were the the prize of the SEC East, and a pretty down year for the SEC East. I mean, you had Florida going 3-6.
Yep.
South Carolina was okay, but they're not good enough to be as good as Georgia. Kentucky, won some games early in the year where it looked like they might be good, but overall, the SEC East, when you consider you had Vanderbilt and Tennessee, two teams that were 0-7 going
right.
into their final game.
Right.
So it was a down year for that division. But ordinarily, the SEC East, you can count on at least Florida, South Carolina, maybe in some years, of being good enough to be ranked in the top 25.
True.
And then even in the West, really, LSU. When you watched that Auburn LSU game, I figured Auburn had a big lead, and when they lost that game, I figured Auburn was done because LSU had lost to some bad teams. They they underachieved all year, and then they kind of picked it up a little bit when they beat Florida, and then they beat Auburn. But overall, LSU did not have a good year. So when Auburn lost that game, I figured, okay, it's just really a down year for the SEC this year. But then Auburn came back, and they were able to beat Alabama. But Alabama beat everybody they needed to beat.
Yeah, they did.
And by the way, the only other team to win a national championship that didn't win their conference was when Alabama won in 2011 when they lost to LSU in the regular season and then wound up beating them in the national championship game.
Yep.
So they could do it again.
They can. Okay, we got the 4 teams that are in. Which of the semifinal matchups is the most intriguing of the two?
Well, it's got to be Clemson and Alabama because they've played for 3 straight years now, and they hate each other. And Alabama's
that's the truth.
They're still mad that they lost on an illegal pick to end the national championship game last year. Even though Clemson drove down the field and did everything they needed to up until that play.
Mm-hmm.
And still, Clemson to me is still an ACC team. I don't care how good they are, and to me, it's still that conference is not the SEC. And no matter what, Clemson has always kind of have to fight for the credit that they deserve. Now, they definitely deserve all the accolades they've gotten in the last couple of years.
So true.
And, even this year, when they lost to, everyone was so shocked when they lost to Syracuse. That's the sign when you really come of age is when you start losing the teams and people are shocked.
Yeah.
So, but third straight you're playing each other, and you know that Alabama's going to want to get them back for what they did last year.
Right.
So, to me, just it has everything that should be in a matchup where you have 2 rivals that really, to me, they really want to play each other. I think if you ask Alabama, they would say, yeah, we wanted them. Wherever we got them, we didn't care, but we want them kind of right what happened last year.
They made a change in the programming. Let's touch this for a brief moment. They made a change in the programming. Instead of playing on New Year's Eve, they're playing on New Year's night. And the 2 semifinals will occur New Year's night. The Alabama-Clemson rematch will be at the Superdome in New Orleans. About the change in the scheduling and them playing New Year's Day, does it add a little more luster to the playoff now?
Well, I think the main reason why they did that is because New Year's night, everybody's out getting drunk or doing something else. So it's probably not enough people are watching a national championship or a playoff. So I guess maybe they figure the next day everybody's kind of getting over a hangover and just no better place to be than in front of a TV set. So maybe that's why they did. But I don't know. It's all done for money, and God knows why they do. All these things for why they do. I'm still mad that they play all the World Series games at night.
Yeah, I miss World Series games during the day, and I can honestly tell you the last time I saw a World Series game during the day was '82, St. Louis and Milwaukee at County Stadium in Milwaukee. And I'm like you. I hate watching all the World Series games at night. Okay, there's no more day games now in the League Championship Series and the World Series. Quickly, let's go back. Let's take a peek at the Rose Bowl. Oklahoma and Georgia. Does it get bad for Georgia in this game? Do they have a shot?
I think they do because, again, you're talking about a Georgia team that only lost 1 game to Auburn, and then they pretty much smacked them down in the SEC championship game. So Georgia's better than people. I think when they lost to Auburn the way they did, people kind of forgot about them. But they were beating teams bad early in the year. Don't forget that they were the number 1 team when the rankings first came out, not
Right.
Alabama. So,
Right.
Georgia has been pretty good this year, and I think as good as Oklahoma's been, it's going to be a little bit different for them playing a team from the SEC than playing some of these teams in the Big 12.
Couple more notes before we get out of here on this Express edition. With the performance that Baker Mayfield had against TCU in the Big 12 championship game, does that wrap up the Heisman for him, or do you have another pick?
No, I think so. I mean, I think it started with the win over Ohio State, and it just is going to continue throughout the playoff, because he has kind of stood out for everybody. All the even quarterbacks going into the year. I mean, what did you mostly hear about? Sam Darnold and some of these other are going to be the first pick, and then here comes Baker Mayfield and has dominated like he has. So I think he's just solidified his position as far as being the best player in college football this year.
Let's look at the Cotton Bowl really, really quick. We'll look at a couple of the other bowls before we get out of here. Ohio State and USC. Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship game, but 2 losses during the year, one to Oklahoma and the other to Iowa, has them playing December 30th instead of January 1st. You think that's a good spot?
I think so. I mean, for Ohio State, you don't want to get kind of lumped in with everybody else now because they're not in the playoff. So, what else can they do? If they played on New Year's Day, you're kind of just putting them in a place where people forget about them.
Right.
But, I think Ohio State fans are mad enough that they got left out of the playoff, that if they had to see them play on a day where the playoff was taking place, they'd be just that more angry. So at least they get to see them play on another day where, they can win, or if they beat USC, everything will be okay, at least, for that moment, and they'll be able to celebrate. Where if they do it on a day with, then now they got to go and watch a playoff game, which they think they should be in, it probably would make it a lot worse.
Michigan, South Carolina on January 1st in the Outback Bowl. These two teams have played before in a bowl game. Jadeveon Clowney made his.
Do you remember that game?
Yes, I do.
In that game?
I absolutely do. South Carolina got cheated out of a turnover. Then Jadeveon Clowney said, "I'll take care of this myself." Nailed the running back in the backfield, stripped the ball, and recovered it himself, and showed the world, "Hey, this should be our possession." And they got the possession. What happens in this game?
I'll never forget that play. By the way, Clowney, just broke through the backfield. I had never seen anything like it. And he held the guy down while he recovered the ball. I'd never seen anything like it. But that was him saying hello to everybody in becoming the eventual best pick in the draft the next year. But I think South Carolina's been underrated all year. They're getting better, but I still don't know if they're good enough to beat Michigan. I think Michigan will probably be able to beat them this year. Michigan kind of had a down year, but overall, I think Harbaugh in these games have probably got the edge as far as coaching. So I would probably give it the edge to Michigan.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Auburn and UCF. Well, UCF gets his challenge. They get the number 7 team in the Auburn Tigers, who lost in the SEC championship game, and these two play on New Year's Day, as mentioned, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Does UCF hang with Auburn? Do they do what they did in the Fiesta Bowl a few years ago?
Yeah, well, with Boise State when they beat Oklahoma. I mean, I think you're in a position now where you kind of waited all year to get this chance if you're UCF, and if you're going to complain about the fact that we went undefeated and we deserve a better place in the rankings, the only way you're going to get it is if you win this game. Otherwise, why would anyone care about putting you in a playoff where you're going to get blown out anyway? So I think this is a much bigger game for them than it is for Auburn.
That's our conversation for this morning. Mark Kelly, thank you very, very much for this. I plan to have you on later in the week so we can go more in depth about these and also some stuff that's going on in the NFL. Y'all will hear this tomorrow, and I'll couple it with what I had planned for today. We'll just do it all tomorrow. Mark, thank you very much. I appreciate it, my man.
I got one thing for you before we get
all
on.
Right.
By the way, the last World Series game played during the day was when Kirk Gibson hit the homer off Rich Gossage.
1984, Tiger Stadium, Game 5.
That was the last time they played a day game in the World Series.
And everything else has been at night since then.
Everything else been starting with Kansas City and St. Louis in '85.
Yep, and I think that was the year they extended the league championship series from 5 games to 7 games, 1985.
Yep. Otherwise, the Blue Jays would have been in the World Series.
True.
Because Kansas City came back from 3-1 in both those series.
Yep, they sure did. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the time.
Take care, Brian.